a talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. I'm telling you, if you want to be a part of it, and people, we are very excited to showcase this next guest. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for a wonderful ride. And on the line with us today, we have Hal Graff II. And we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Love and Death at the Encierro. It's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But people, get this. This is the book that we're going to be discussing today, okay? This is the anchor for today's interview. But Hal has been a busy little bee, I tell you, man, because this book is actually just one in a 26-book series. That's right, there are 25 others in this series alone, but that's not all. Okay, we have those 26, but Hal has written 85 other books. I mean, this man has been putting in work, and he is putting everybody else to shame because it is quite the accomplishment that he's been able to do. And you're going to want to head on over to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and pick up every single one. Now again, today is all about love and death at the Encierro. And I will say, Hal was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best publishers in the business, Stellar Literary Press and Media. So if you or anyone you know have a book that they'd like moved, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give. Contact Stellar and have their fantastic team move it for you. And you can find out more information on them at stellarliterary.com. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Hal here on the line. Now, as I mentioned, he has a plethora of books, quite the canon, that you can absolutely go and take advantage of today. But today is all about love and death, and we're really looking forward to this. And you know, I'm not going to steal too much of his thunder, but I know a lot of it, or at least a portion of it, because it is a fictional narrative, at least a portion of it comes from his background and from his experience, okay? Hal was a professional baseball player, okay? So for my sports fans out there, my baseball fans out there, you may recognize the name. And he is someone that is absolutely the truest embodiment of a person of distinction, and it is an absolute pleasure to have him as a guest here with us. And at the end of the day, he's the expert. He's written the book, he's done the research, and he's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. So let's bring him here with us, okay? Hal, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Benji, and I hope you are too. And it's my pleasure to be here with you and your listening audience.
Well, thank you very much, Hal. The pleasure is all ours, okay? We're really looking forward to this. And listen, man, with such a canon that you have, with all the works that you've created, I mean, it's really a toss-up. Like, where do we start, right? Because Love and Encierro, I'm looking forward to this discussion, of course. But you have so many other books, and it's quite the feat that you've accomplished here, man. So congratulations on that. Thank you for being a guest and sharing it with us. And Hal, we're really looking forward to this. But before we go into the book, I think it's important to start off by learning a little bit more about your background. So let's start there, Hal. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Well, it's my honor to be here, Benji. Thank you. And I'm an outdoors guy. I'm a father and grandfather. I've done a lot of things in my life. I was a professional baseball player until injuries sidelined me for good. And then I became a vice president of marketing at an insurance company. And then I went on to become many, many other things, including a farm owner, a business owner, a seminar trainer, a college professor, because I have a doctorate in business.
Wow.
And now I'm finally doing what everyone told me all through my education system that I should be doing. I'm now an author, so I'm enjoying this immensely.
Absolutely. Well, you must. I mean, listen, if you write 86 books, I'd ask, Hal, if you don't like what you're doing, why did you write the 85 others, right? So this is fantastic, man. I'm going to keep coming back to that number because it is so impressive. Hal, without further ado, of course, the anchor for today's interview is all about your book, Love and Death at the Encierro. Tell us a little bit more about the narrative, please.
Well, it's quite an interesting story, and it is set at the famous festival of the Running of the Bulls in Pamplona, Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And the title, as you mentioned, is Love and Death at the Encero. And the Encero, the word means the running of the bulls. And this story is somewhat unique in that it not only has one plot line, but it has two. And they dovetail together to provide quite an interesting read. The first part of the main plot is a murder mystery that takes place at the festival with a serial killer running loose. And the second part of the main objective, the main plot, is the fact that a terrorist group that wants its freedom from the Spanish government has a plan to take down the bull ring and kill thousands of people in an attempt to gain their freedom and independence from the Spanish country. The hero is a guy named Hal Graff, who was also a ball player at the end of his career, and he went to Spain to enjoy the festival, and lo and behold, he met a beautiful supermodel, and they become enamored with each other and fall in love. And from that point forward, all kinds of things happen to Hal Graff. I call him the accidental hero because he always manages to come out on top despite what he encounters. And he embarks with the police after he identifies the serial killer in an attempt to chase and bring that culprit to justice. In that process, he also comes across a terrorist plot, as I mentioned, and he addresses that plot in an attempt to help the Spanish government and the local police stop that disaster from happening. And that's how both of them come into play.
Fantastic. You know, Hal, I want to cover inspiration next. Now, as you've already started by saying, you have had many careers in your lifetime, and then finally in retirement, you got to what everybody has been telling you should be doing all along, right? Which, of course, is writing. So, starting off with inspiration, where does that love for creative writing come from?
Well, actually, it came from my father and my mother and my grandfather on my father's side of the family. All of them were big personality, outgoing, great storytellers, and I grew up in that environment. And much to the surprise of my teachers, they agreed that I had those skills that were passed on from God.
Right.
And those were my inspirations. And other authors that I enjoyed reading when I was a younger person were all the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, which were written by Arthur Conan Doyle, and all the James Bond books, which were also favorites of mine, written by Ian Fleming.
You know, Hal, thank you very much for all of that. And, you know, listen, still sticking with the concept of inspiration, of course, you mentioned 007 and how James Bond series is something that really played a big part in your life. I see the 007 in the back on the door, which I think is so appropriate given the topic of conversation. You know, when we're talking about this particular book, Hal, because we talked about the inspiration behind in terms of writing. Well, the inspiration behind this particular book, talk to us a little bit more about what inspired you to write this narrative.
Well, my whole life, from the time I was a teenager, my three best friends and I were all going to go to the running of the bulls. And of course, life got in the way. And I finally told them in 2015, I'm going whether you guys come with me or not. And no one came with me. But anyway, that was an inspiration to go. And I'd studied and learned that and watched the videos of the running of the bulls countless times over the years. So that was like a bucket list trip for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that the character I wanted to possess in this book would be a little bit like my own life. because that was easy to write. I grew up in a baseball family. My dad played pro baseball also, until he had to go to World War II. And it was just a natural, since I lived some of that life myself. And that started this particular character in my first series on a life-changing trip. And in the other 25 volumes, he eventually becomes a secret agent. And hopefully he will be the James Bond of his day.
There you have it. Hal, listen, I'm telling you, these are books specifically catered for the big screen. I can easily envision this as a movie or a television series. There's so much there. Hollywood is going to love this, okay? If people haven't started to contact you yet, don't be surprised if they start to, because I can easily see this on the big screen. It's something that's right down that alley. People, again, we're here on the line with Hal Graff II. We're discussing his amazing book, Love and Death at the Enciro. That's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But make sure to check into the other 85 books that he's written. I'm telling you, that's not a typo. I'm not mistaken. There's 85 other books, another 25 in this particular series as well. You surely will not be disappointed. Head on over there today and pick up your copies. You know, Hal, next question that I'd love to get into, and really a curiosity for myself, man, but what would you say was a highlight for you in writing the book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you began?
As far as inspiration and why writing this particular book, it was a natural fit for me, and it was the first stepping stone to my writing career, and also to the 26 series in this one.
Right.
And that was the pattern that started, and it just kept going and going and going. And yes, I'm going to continue writing until I take my final breath, and my final words are not going to be the end. They're going to be the beginning, because God needs writers in heaven.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that, man. Well, listen, when you get there, tell some of my favorite writers. I was always a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe, Shakespeare. I was a big fan of Maya Angelou. I'm not a poet, but I mean, come on, Maya Angelou, she's incredible. So listen, when you get there, and I hope it's not for a very long time, Hal, but when you get there, please tell them that I said hello, because I am absolutely enthralled by their work and so impressed, as I am with yours as well. You know, Hal, keeping it moving here, next question. We have a few extra moments here, and I really want to take this opportunity to give you a chance to go into a description of another one of your books. Now, we know that in the Love and Death series, there's 26 books in totality. So I say let's close off that series here, and since we have so many others, dealer's choice, because nobody knows the books better than you do. Please go into a brief description of one of your other narratives outside of this Love and Death series.
Well, thank you very much. And I have 5 other series. The second series I wrote was about a private investigator, and I did 42 novels there. And then I did a couple more where I had 6 and 6, and then I did a Christian book where I had 1. But the latest series I'm writing in is called the Wes Oakley series, history series. And I've written and published 10 volumes there, and I'm starting on my 11th one right after the New Year's. And he's a former professional football player, and he becomes a hunting and fishing guide in Idaho, which is always his dream. But in between those 2 items, he was in a Navy SEAL Team 6 and served his country honorably. Mm-hmm. And once he became an outfitter, the first book I wrote about was that one of his clients was the current president of the United States. And he had booked a bear hunt with Wes Oakley to come out while he spoke at an economic conference set in Ketchum, Idaho, which is where that series is centered. And on that bear hunt, a Russian airplane full of 6 terrorists ready to take out the president crashes on a mountaintop. And Oakley happens to be on the top of the mountain, and he is the only man standing between those 6 men getting to the President of the United States and assassinating him. So the whole story is set on a mountain, 3/4 of it anyway. It's much like the movie Rambo, which was set on the mountain. Mm-hmm. I say Rambo, but it was actually one of Sylvester Stallone's movies that was, I can't remember the title right now, but it was set on the mountain and how he took down a bunch of evil people. And that's what Gatewood attempts to do in this novel. And that novel is titled Assassination in Ketchum. And that was a exceedingly interesting political espionage book to write. And I then followed that one up with the sequel, which in the first book, the main terrorist leader, they were all wiped out by Oakley. Mm-hmm. His brother comes back in the sequel to try to kill the president again. So that's another dynamite political espionage follow-up. And as you mentioned about my novel, which I thank you again for, being it adaptable to the big screen, I have had a lot of interest in that from Hollywood, but I haven't struck a deal with that yet. These 2 first novels in the Wes Oakley series would also make great movies.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I can easily see that happening. How I'm recognizing a pattern, right, between sports and special agents, right? A lot of that is kind of intermingled there, and I'm recognizing that pattern. And like I said, if it hasn't happened yet, I know you said that there's been interest that has been expressed. Give it time, man, because I feel like it's only a matter of time before it starts to get there. Because let's be honest, so I'm located in Los Angeles. I'm an actor and a filmmaker, and Hollywood seems to be pretty tapped out with ideas. A lot of it is just reoccurring or they're just regurgitating the same old premise. And I'm telling you, you have a plethora of information, right? Of topics that can be touched. I think it's going to happen, Hal, because this is incredible, man. And listen, people, it starts with Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You have to head on over there and pick up your copies today. I'm telling you, just get lost in the journey. You can thank me later. Hal, last couple of questions here as we start to tie out. I would be doing my listening audience a severe disservice if I didn't ask this next one. And I love having this platform, being an artist myself, as I mentioned, actor, filmmaker in Los Angeles. But I love having the platform really to pay it forward, in a sense, whenever opportunities present themselves. And Hal, I would be doing my audience a severe disservice. You're someone who has written 86 books, man. I cannot even fathom the amount of dedication that it takes to accomplish such a feat. But you are someone that has been through the process. You've not only written your narratives, but you've gotten the books published. And anybody that's been through the process understands writing the book is only half the battle. So I'd love to take this opportunity, Hal, for any of our listening audience members that may be new writers or someone just starting off on that writing journey. What are some words of wisdom that you can offer to them about the journey they're getting ready to embark upon?
Well, I think the main thing is never to give up. And even if you're waiting for success, you're getting the pleasure of creating novels that are giving the reading public pleasure. And when you complete a book, it's a marvelous process, and you've done something that other people can enjoy for eternity as long as that book is around.
Right.
So other than never giving up, I would say, for me, it just worked easily by getting a track to run on, by having the whole book outline, sample chapters, and I had a track to run on, as I said.
Right.
And of course, when you write a book, it often changes, and most of the time the ending changes, and usually for the better. And I would advise that. And I'd also quote an example of an author that's famous that I have not read one word of her marvelous books. That's J.T. Rowling.
Oh, yeah.
And
J.K. Rowling.
if anyone would go back, if they think they're having a difficult time, they need some inspiration, everyone should look at her life story, because what she went through as a young lady and how she became as famous and her talents surfaced, it is just amazing, and that would give anyone inspiration. Not only a writer, but anyone that's feeling down about their life. And I'd urge people to go look up her life story.
You know, wonderful words of wisdom there, Hal, and so much to unpack. But when we're talking about J.K. Rowling, right, and we're talking, of course, she is the author of all of the Harry Potter books, amongst many others. But I think a lot of times you can look back, and I remember somebody posed the analogy of an iceberg to me before, and a lot of times we, as the general public, we get to see the success, right? We get to see the glitz and the glam. We miss all of those early days, right? So I believe she started to write her book, Harry Potter, on like a napkin or something. I may be mistaken, but I believe, she definitely came from humble beginnings, right? I know we can find countless examples. Walt Disney started out in his garage, right? And I think that's a great example, right? When we're talking about perseverance and we're talking about what you started off by saying is never give up. And people, listen, I know we're oversimplifying right now because for the sake of the interview, and oversimplification is what's necessary. But a lot of times we get to see the success, but we don't get to see the hardship that came prior to that. And I promise you, there are maybe a handful of people that have reached overnight success. The majority of successful people, it did not happen overnight. It was time, it was blood, it was sweat, and it was tears. And just by continuing to keep their head down and continuing to chip away, eventually they reached their promised land, right? And their what they were looking for, what success ultimately equated to for them. And I love that example about never giving up. And of course, coming from a sports background, Hal would have put that out there, right? It makes sense. But people, it's wonderful advice. And you really want to do it. Another thing that he said was having a roadmap, right? Having things set out so you know how to follow. You know what is upcoming, and it really will keep you on track. Now, I'm not a writer, but I have a lot of writer friends, and of course, my father is a writer as well. And one of the things that I get told constantly from my friends who are writers is a lot of times, ideas and inspiration will just come up and then they just want to write it down. And that's great. But if you don't have a roadmap set, if you're not sure exactly what you're going to be tackling next, things can get out of control very fast. And then it gets messy. Okay? So you want to keep it honed in. That is going to do wonders in terms of really helping you excel at your craft. And people, listen, you can put any type of cliche that you want on it. It'll apply. The one that I'm going to choose to go for, though, is practice makes perfect. You're going to want to continue to dedicate yourself as much as humanly possible to your particular craft, whether it's writing, whether it's acting, whether it is anything. Dedication, time spent to it will really help sharpen your skills and get you to that, for lack of a better term, promised land for it, okay? And I'm saying the words of advice that Hal just offered is absolutely fantastic. People, I'm going to say it for you again. I know I don't have to, but let's just re-impress it, okay? As we close out of here, once more, we're here on the line with Hal Graff II. We just finished discussing his amazing book, Love and Death at the Insiro. Now, people, keep in mind, that's available for purchase through Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble. But again, there are 85 other books, okay? This man has put in a ton of work. You're going to want to head on over there and pick up copies of every single one. You surely will not be disappointed. For my Hollywood elites out there, look into this, because this is something you're going to want to tap into as well. There is a huge audience for it, and you're doing yourself a disservice by not picking it up. Okay? Hal, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Such an honor. I truly do mean that. I had an absolute pleasure having you as a guest. Once again, thank you for being with us on People of Distinction.
Benji, thank you very much, and thank you to your readers for watching this. And it's been my absolute pleasure. And let's do this over and over and over again, because I have a lot of great novels we can do it with.
Absolutely.